In a hidden valley, Tom unearthed a brilliant amethyst. Its beauty left him in awe, but an unsettling feeling crept in. He sought out a jeweler, hoping to unravel its mystery. As he entered the shop, the jeweler's eyes widened, and Tom's anticipation grew. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. "Sir, please come in," the jeweler, Mr. Allister, said as soon as Tom opened the door. He was holding the amethyst in his hand, and he immediately noticed that the jeweler was already staring at it with a curious expression. For some reason, he thought about putting it back into his pocket and leaving the shop, but he told himself, "Don't be silly." "What have you got there?" Mr. Allister asked, and Tom finally opened his hand and laid the crystal on the desk in front of him. He explained where he had found it, and he added, "I have seen many crystals, but this one looks different to me. Could you take a look at it, please?" Of course, Mr. Allister was very interested, and he carefully took the amethyst in his hands. "It is indeed truly beautiful," he said as he inspected the crystal more closely. He grabbed a magnifying glass from a drawer to get a better look at it, and this was the moment things changed. Of course, Tom had no idea of what was about to happen. It would almost make him regret ever entering that jeweler's shop. Suddenly, Mr. Allister turned around with his back to Tom and started muttering something like, "This can't be true. I cannot be seeing this right." He stood still for a few seconds as if contemplating what he was going to do, and then he disappeared into the back office of his shop, leaving Tom alone and confused. "Sir, it's Mr. Allister, right? Is everything all right?" he asked, but he received no response. He was at a loss of what to do. Minutes later, Mr. Allister finally returned to the shop and took place behind his desk, raising an eyebrow and skeptically looking at Tom. "Oh, there you are. Could I have that crystal back, please? I need to leave. I'm running late for an appointment," Tom told him. Of course, he had no appointment, but he just wanted to leave. However, Mr. Allister shook his head and warily asked him, "Sir, I have some questions for you. Where did you say you found this crystal?" Tom repeated the same story again, but Mr. Allister didn't seem to believe him. "In a valley? Are you sure about that?" he asked, raising one eyebrow in suspicion. "Yes, like I told you twice already. Now, I'd like the crystal back. I'll find another jeweler to help me," Tom snapped, getting frustrated by the whole situation now. However, Mr. Allister had other plans. "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't let you leave," he said. "Well, you can't make me stay either. Give me that crystal, now," Tom replied. His patience was running out, and he didn't like the jeweler's tone. Tom noticed that Mr. Allister was not holding the amethyst, and he also couldn't see it anywhere on the counter. He realized that the crystal was still in the back office, behind a locked door. "Yes, the crystal is locked safely in my office, and the police are on their way." Tom's eyes grew wide in disbelief upon hearing this. "Come on, don't act like you don't know why. Did you really think I wouldn't catch on to you? I know what you're doing," the jeweler replied, now also raising his voice for the first time. Tom didn't understand what was happening, but he didn't have a good feeling about it. He truly had no idea what the jeweler was on about, and he also didn't understand why he would possibly have needed to call the cops on him. However, it was too late for him now anyway. He heard the wailing sound of sirens in the distance, and they were only becoming louder and thus closer. Only moments later, the police arrived, and they immediately ordered Tom to get in the car. "Sir, we need to ask you some questions about that crystal. You need to come back to the station with us," an officer told him, and Tom's face turned pale. When they arrived at the police station, the officers led Tom into a dark interrogation room and told him, "Wait here, we'll be right back." He was left alone and confused, and he had no idea what was happening. Tom sat across from the detective in the dimly lit room, his hands nervously clasped on the table. "Tell me about the amethyst," he said. Tom swallowed hard. "I found it in a valley while hiking. I swear I had no idea it was anything but a pretty stone." The detective leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "That amethyst, Mr. Tom, is not just any stone. It's linked to a high-profile case," he revealed. Tom's heart raced as he processed this information. "Your simple find is connected to a major criminal investigation, Tom," the detective continued, his tone more serious. Tom's shock was evident. He felt a growing sense of dread, realizing the depth of trouble he might be in. The detective stood up, signaling the end of the interrogation. "We have a lot to look into, Tom. Stay available for further questioning," he said, his voice firm. Tom was left alone, his mind racing with unanswered questions and fears. As Tom rose to leave, the detective's hand on his shoulder stopped him. "You're not going anywhere yet," the detective said firmly. "That amethyst you found," the detective began, his tone grave, "was part of a famous museum collection. It was reported stolen several years ago." Tom's eyes widened in disbelief. "Stolen? But how could I?" he stammered, struggling to process this revelation. The idea that he had unwittingly stumbled upon a piece of lost history was overwhelming. Tom felt the walls closing in as the detective outlined the complexities of the case. "Even if you didn't know, it's hard to prove your innocence," the detective said. Tom's mind raced. Despite Tom's fervent protests, the decision was made. "You'll be staying with us for a while," the detective declared. Tom was escorted to a holding cell, the reality of his detention setting in. He was a captive in a situation he couldn't understand, a nightmare that had spiraled far beyond a simple discovery in a valley. In the holding cell, Tom was presented with the growing evidence against him. "Witnesses near the valley, similar amethysts found in your possession," the detective listed. Tom felt a sense of injustice swell within him. "But I'm innocent," he pleaded, his voice echoing off the stark walls. The evidence, circumstantial as it was, painted a damning picture, one he struggled to refute. After what felt like an eternity, Tom was released due to insufficient evidence. "You're free to go, but don't leave town," the detective warned. Stepping out of the station, Tom felt the weight of suspicion still hanging over him. Once home, Tom's thoughts raced. Feeling trapped and desperate, he knew he couldn't just wait for the truth to surface. "I need to find out where this amethyst really came from," he resolved. Tom started his investigation, poring over maps of the valley and researching the history of the area. Every night, his small apartment transformed into a makeshift investigation hub, with notes and photos spread across every surface. As Tom pondered his next move, he was approached by Linda, a journalist who had been following his case. "I think you're onto something, and I want to help," she said with a determined look in her eyes. Surprised yet relieved, Tom welcomed her offer. Together, they formed an unexpected alliance in the pursuit of the elusive truth. Tom and Linda worked tirelessly, sifting through old records and news articles. They uncovered evidence linking the amethyst to a heist orchestrated by a now-defunct gang. Their investigation took a darker turn as they unearthed connections to high-ranking individuals. "This goes much deeper than we thought," Tom remarked, looking over Linda's shoulder at a web of names and connections. They understood that exposing this conspiracy could shake the very foundations of the criminal underworld and those connected to it. With each new discovery, Tom and Linda became increasingly aware of the dangers they faced. Their investigation had attracted the attention of those who wished to keep the truth buried. As Tom and Linda delved deeper into the investigation, the threats became more tangible. Sinister phone calls in the dead of night and anonymous warnings left on their cars heightened their anxiety. "We must be getting close," Linda whispered, her voice tinged with both fear and determination. The closer they got to the truth, the more dangerous their quest became. The intimidation escalated as they uncovered the involvement of influential figures. Shadowy figures followed them, and veiled threats were made against their loved ones. The breakthrough came when they obtained a secret recording of a confession from a key figure in the heist. The voice in the recording detailed the planning, execution, and aftermath of the Amethyst's disappearance. Pushing for justice, Tom and Linda navigated a complex web of power and corruption. They were careful, knowing that one misstep could jeopardize everything. In a stunning turn of events, an expert analysis revealed that the amethyst Tom had found was a masterfully crafted replica. This revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation, overturning many of the assumptions they had made. Tom and Linda were stunned, realizing the depths of deception involved in the case were even greater than they had imagined. This new revelation about the replica amethyst opened up unexpected avenues in the investigation. Tom and Linda revisited the evidence, seeing it in a new light. They realized that the replica was a deliberate misdirection, a key piece in a much larger puzzle. With the discovery of the replica, Tom's innocence became increasingly apparent. The evidence that had once seemed to implicate him now pointed to a more complex scheme in which he was merely an unwitting participant. As the police reopened the case with the new information, Tom looked forward to turning the page on this chapter of his life, hopeful for a future free from the shadow of suspicion. Sitting alone in his quiet apartment, Tom reflected on the journey he had been through. The ordeal had changed him in ways he had never expected. He was no longer the naive man who stumbled upon a strange amethyst in a valley. He had become more cautious, more aware of the complexities of the world around him. Tom decided to keep the replica amethyst as a symbol of his journey. It would serve as a reminder of the ordeal he had endured, the lessons he had learned, and the strength he had discovered within himself. Though his name was cleared, Tom knew that some mysteries remained unsolved. Who had crafted the replica, and why? Where was the real amethyst? These unanswered questions lingered in his mind, a reminder that some aspects of any story may remain hidden, elusive to even the most determined seeker of truth. With the case behind him, Tom looked forward to the future with a fresh perspective. He felt as though he had been given a second chance at life, an opportunity to start anew with the wisdom gained from his ordeal. As his story neared its end, Tom reflected on the journey he had undertaken. The story concluded with Tom poised at the threshold of a new chapter in his life, forever changed by his extraordinary experience. With the mystery of the amethyst resolved, he felt a sense of closure and readiness to move forward. He stepped into the future with confidence, carrying with him the enduring lessons of his incredible adventure.